You walk into the supermarket and the prices just don't make sense anymore. Foods that Jamaica is famous for are being imported, crops are still being lost to drought conditions, and the grocery bill climbs every month. Now the government is betting almost 26 billion Jamaican dollars that they can change that with one project on the south coast. It's called the Pedro Plains Irrigation Expansion Project, a national development project in South St. Elizabeth that will take water from the Black River, spread it across about 4,000 hectares of farmland, and is expected to support up to 6,000 farmers and households in Jamaica's breadbasket parish. Ground was broken in July 2025, and even after Hurricane Melissa, the Agriculture Minister is saying the project remains on track, with pipe laying and major works set to ramp up from 2026. In this video, we're going inside Jamaica's $26 billion Pedro Plains Irrigation Expansion Project and how this system is actually supposed to work, who really benefits if it succeeds, and the big question hanging over everything: can this project finally help Jamaica feed itself, or is it just another expensive promise on paper? Welcome back to Evolve Jamaica. Let's start with the problem. In 2024, Jamaica imported over $1 billion worth of agricultural products. The United States alone supplied $646 million, that's roughly 64% of Jamaica's total food imports. Here's what's frustrating: we're importing things we can actually grow here. These aren't exotic crops, St. Elizabeth has been growing them for generations. About 40% of those imports go to household consumers through supermarkets. The rest feeds Jamaica's 4 million plus tourist arrivals each year through hotels and restaurants. So why are we importing food we can grow? Two main reasons: drought and inadequate infrastructure. Jamaica's rainfall is unpredictable. St. Elizabeth, despite being the breadbasket parish, suffers regular dry spells that devastate crops. Farmers plant, pray for rain, and watch their investments die in the field when the rains don't come. And when the rains do come, especially with climate change making storms more intense, they come too hard. Hurricane Melissa in October 2025 struck Jamaica as a Category 5 storm with 185 miles per hour winds, becoming the strongest hurricane ever recorded to hit the island. The storm caused catastrophic damage, with an estimated 90% of St. Elizabeth's farms affected. The solution? Irrigation. Countries with advanced irrigation systems produce 2-3 times more per hectare than rain-fed agriculture. The Essex Valley project in St. Elizabeth brought 1,200 hectares under irrigation and benefited about 700 farmers directly. Production increased. Farmers could plant year-round. But according to Agriculture Minister Floyd Green, Pedro Plains will be more than 3 times larger, potentially changing the economics of farming in Jamaica forever. So here's how the Pedro Plains Irrigation Expansion Project is supposed to work. The water source is the Black River, Jamaica's longest navigable river, flowing 44 kilometers through St. Elizabeth. Feasibility studies conducted by French consultants from Société du Canal de Provence concluded that the Black River has sufficient surface water flow to support irrigation for 4,000 hectares, even during peak drought periods. The system starts with a new intake structure at Lacovia on the Black River. This modern structure is designed to draw water reliably without damaging the river ecosystem. From Lacovia, water will be pushed through a pressurized trunk main, a large pipeline network spreading across the Pedro Plains area. This includes communities like Mountainside, Paratee, Greenfield, Beacon, Pedro Cross, Flagaman, Southfield, and Top Hill. The system includes multiple reservoirs and pumping stations strategically placed to maintain consistent water pressure so water reaches farm gates reliably. Here's what makes this cutting edge: the entire operation will be powered by a 9.7 megawatt solar photovoltaic system. Renewable energy running the pumps, reducing operating costs and making the system environmentally sustainable. Minister Green announced that the project will include agro-processing facilities and cold storage built right in the project area, meaning farmers can harvest, store, process, and sell without depending on external infrastructure. The timeline: ground was broken in July 2025. According to Minister Green, the intake structure and installation of the first reservoir will take approximately 2 years. That means by mid-2027, water should start flowing to the first farms. The cost, 26 billion Jamaican dollars. This is Jamaica's largest agricultural infrastructure investment in history. France's government provided a grant of €500,000 for preliminary feasibility studies, and French Ambassador Olivier Guyon-Varch called it a game changer for the food safety of Jamaica, for the tourism industry of Jamaica, and for the exports of Jamaica. So who actually wins if this project succeeds? The 6,000 farmers and households the government says will be directly supported. Flagaman, according to Minister Green, has the most registered farmers of any community in Jamaica despite not having reliable irrigation. Imagine what happens when those farmers suddenly have year-round water access. Right now, farmers in South St. Elizabeth are gambling. They plant during what they hope is the rainy season. If the rains fail, their crops fail. If storms hit, everything gets destroyed. With reliable irrigation, that gambling stops. Farmers can plan multiple growing cycles per year. They can commit to contracts with supermarkets and exporters. They can invest in better seeds and equipment because the risk drops dramatically. And here's something unprecedented. As part of the project rollout, the government is issuing over 1,000 land titles to residents in the project area. The first 100 titles were distributed at the July groundbreaking ceremony. Why does titling matter? Banks won't lend without clear land ownership. No title, no collateral. No collateral, no loans. No loans, no ability to scale up operations. Minister Green cited feasibility studies showing this project will increase agricultural production by at least 35% in the surveyed areas. What will they grow? Sweet potatoes, yams, pumpkin, carrots, cabbage, tomatoes, sweet pepper, watermelon, cantaloupe, scallion, hot pepper crops. St. Elizabeth is already known for being the breadbasket of Jamaica. With cold storage and agro-processing on site, farmers could package and ship to regional markets in the Caribbean, or even further. The National Irrigation Commission will operate the system, with a dedicated facility being built in the project area. That means jobs, technicians, operators, maintenance crews, administrative staff. Now let's address the environmental concern. The Black River Lower Morass is Jamaica's largest freshwater wetland, about 6,075 hectares. It's been protected under the Ramsar Convention since 1998 as a wetland of international importance. The morass is a biodiversity hotspot with hundreds of plant species, fish, crabs, shrimp, and American crocodiles. It's also a critical buffer against flooding and a tourist attraction. People pay daily to cruise the lower Black River. According to Anthony Mackenzie, Director of Environmental Management and Conservation at NEPA, the project has been reviewed and approved. NEPA issued environmental permits after various assessments. NEPA has announced expanded monitoring of the Black River starting in 2025, including deploying more staff and a marine vessel to safeguard the ecosystem. But here's the bigger question: what's the cost of not building this? Hurricane Melissa showed what climate change is doing to Jamaica. The western parishes including St. Elizabeth were catastrophically hit. An estimated 90% of homes in Black River lost their roofs. Farms were flattened. The parish that feeds Jamaica was suddenly unable to feed itself. The Ministry of Agriculture estimated 90% of greenhouse farmers in St. Elizabeth, Clarendon, and Manchester were affected. The economic damage to Jamaica was estimated at $9 billion. And here's what people were asking: would the Pedro Plains project survive? On December 5, 2025, just over a month after Melissa, Minister Floyd Green addressed farmers at a solar cold storage project opening in Flagaman, St. Elizabeth. His message was clear: the Pedro Plains irrigation expansion project remains on track. According to the Jamaica Information Service, Minister Green reaffirmed the government's commitment to continuing major agricultural projects that enhance resilience and food security. Hurricane Melissa delayed some work, but it didn't kill the project. If anything, Melissa proved why projects like Pedro Plains are essential. St. Elizabeth's farms were destroyed, but they would have struggled even without the storm due to lack of water. The hurricane reinforced that Jamaica cannot continue relying on rain-fed agriculture and imported food. According to the original timeline, major works including pipe laying and reservoir construction were set to ramp up in 2026. At the July 2025 groundbreaking ceremony, Prime Minister Andrew Holness made it clear: Pedro Plains isn't just about St. Elizabeth. It's part of a long-term national strategy to make Jamaica self-sufficient in food production. Since 2016, the Holness administration has implemented 12 major irrigation projects across 6 parishes: Portland, Clarendon, St. Catherine, Manchester, St. Thomas, and St. Elizabeth. Over 60 kilometers of irrigation pipelines have been laid. Solar farms are being installed at multiple sites. The Southern Plains Agricultural Development Project, spanning Amity Hall and Bridge Pen in St. Catherine and Parnassus in Clarendon, is bringing 795 hectares under irrigation. Essex Valley in St. Elizabeth is scheduled for completion by January 2026, benefiting over 700 farmers directly. Together with Pedro Plains, these projects will expand irrigation to approximately 5,000 hectares, more than 4 times what Jamaica had under irrigation a decade ago. If successful, this could fundamentally shift Jamaica's economy. Instead of spending over $1 billion annually on food imports, that money stays in Jamaica. Farmers earn more, rural communities thrive, agriculture grows as a share of GDP, and it changes the perception of farming. With irrigation, mechanization, cold storage, and reliable markets, farming becomes a viable business, something young Jamaicans might actually choose to pursue. But not everyone is convinced this will work. And there are legitimate reasons for skepticism. Jamaica has a history of announced projects that never materialize. Buildings started and never finished. Equipment that arrives and breaks down with no maintenance. Back in 2023, when the project was first announced, some farmers in St. Elizabeth openly expressed doubt. Prime Minister Holness himself acknowledged that the Pedro Plains irrigation dream dates back to the 1970s. It's appeared in national addresses and political promises for decades but never actually happened. Then there's the money. $26 billion is enormous. The country is still managing high debt levels. In a context where schools need repairs, hospitals need equipment, and roads need fixing, is irrigation the best use of limited resources? Even if the infrastructure gets built, can Jamaica maintain it? The National Irrigation Commission will be responsible for a complex system of pumps, pipelines, reservoirs, and a 9.7 megawatt solar array. That requires trained technicians, spare parts, and consistent funding. Will small-scale farmers adapt to irrigated farming? It's not just about turning on a tap. Irrigated agriculture requires different techniques, timing, and knowledge. And even if farmers produce more, will they be able to sell it? Jamaica's agricultural markets are notoriously inefficient. Middlemen take large cuts. Transportation is expensive. Cold chain infrastructure barely exists outside major towns. Finally, climate change. Yes, irrigation helps farmers adapt to drought. But Hurricane Melissa showed that climate change also means more intense storms. Even the best irrigation system can't protect crops from 185-mile-per-hour winds. So if you're wondering whether this project will actually succeed, here's what to watch for over the next 2 to 3 years. First, physical progress. Are pipes actually going into the ground? Is the intake structure at Lacovia being built? Are reservoirs and pumping stations taking shape? Second, funding flows. Is the government actually releasing the 26 billion Jamaican dollars, or is it being diverted? Check national budget presentations and Ministry of Agriculture financial statements. Third, farmer engagement. Are farmers being trained? Are they receiving land titles? Are they being involved in planning, or is this purely top-down? Fourth, complementary infrastructure. Is cold storage being built? Are agro-processing facilities materializing? Irrigation without post-harvest infrastructure means farmers can produce more but still can't sell efficiently. Fifth, environmental monitoring. Is NEPA actually monitoring the Black River's health? Are there regular public reports on water quality and ecosystem impact? By late 2027, 2 years after groundbreaking, water should be flowing to the first farms. That's the test. If it succeeds, St. Elizabeth could become not just Jamaica's breadbasket, but the Caribbean's vegetable supplier. Food imports could drop. Rural communities could thrive. Farming could attract young people instead of driving them away. But success requires more than digging trenches and laying pipes. It requires consistent funding, competent management, farmer support, market access, and political will that survives beyond election cycles. The question isn't whether Jamaica needs this project. The question is whether Jamaica can actually deliver it. Drop a comment. Do you think this project will actually change Jamaica's food security, or will it be another incomplete promise? Thanks for watching Evolve Jamaica. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the like button and subscribe. See you next time.